Today we're going to discuss my 5 POTA activation failures. You ready? Let's go.
Hi, my name's Mike. I'm a full-time traveler and ham radio operator. I activate amazing parks all over the United States. Join the adventure and see what's next.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
That traveler has
I just do things.
This is a huge, beastly, bulging man. Plates were from Kansas.
Hey radio friends, I'm Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike. This is the Travelin Ham, and yes, today we are discussing my 5 big failures, my 5 biggest flops in my 5-year POTA activation career. Okay, so let's talk about what failures are first of all. I mean, strict definition obviously is that we are making fewer than 10 contacts. Okay, if we look at my Parks on the Air profile here on their website, we look up here in activations and we can see that I've activated 274 times successfully out of 306 attempts. So that seems to indicate quite a few failures, right? I mean, we've got 26 and 6. That's 32 failures, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I wouldn't consider failures. If I'm in my RV camping in a national forest and I want to hunt for a little bit, but maybe I don't get 10 contacts, I'm going to give that other activator the park-to-park contact because I'm in a park. But at the same time, for whatever reason at that time, I didn't have the time to run an activation on my own. So I just timed out and had 5 or 6 contacts, and that one is a failure. Okay, I'm not gonna not try to get those contacts just to avoid a failure in that situation. Or let's say I'm setting up for an activation that I want to start at midnight, at midnight UTC, right? It's only 10 or 15 minutes beforehand. But this has happened where there'd be someone like K8MRD, someone I want to get in my log is activating. It's at the end of the day and he's not real busy. And I know at the stroke of midnight, all of a sudden he's going to start getting busy again. So I jump in there a few minutes early and make the contact and get him a park-to-park at the same time. Great. Counts as a failure, right? Because then I only have 1 contact on that day before the midnight hour. That's happened. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. I don't worry about these failures. And those situations aren't really what we're discussing today. We're discussing the times that I went out in the field trying to make, a concerted effort. I'm going out in the field with a concerted effort to get 10 contacts and successfully activate the park, but couldn't do it. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I think if you look at the parks that I've activated here on my profile page and you see 168 out of 172, now I think that's much more accurate as to how successful I've been as an activator. That seems to imply there were 4 times that I went out and couldn't get that park activated. And that's where I think I really stand, and that's what we're gonna look at those activations today. What kept me from activating a park? Okay, well, one of these failed activations, one of these parks I failed to activate was on a California road this year. And I got in the park, it was the middle of the afternoon, propagation wasn't too good, it was taking some time, and I got 10. I got right on the number of 10 and just decided to move on and risk it at 10 contacts. And it happened, I should have scanned my list real quick just to make sure there's no dupes in there, and I had 1. So on that activation at Red Rock Canyon State Park, I had a dupe that knocked my contacts from 10 down to 9. POTA only counted 9. They're all in the same band. There was no real workaround there. So I ended up not activating that park. Okay, that's just dummy on my part. There's really nothing that we can learn from that other than, hey, just scan your list real quick if you stop right on 10 and make sure there's no dupes. Now, here's another one that doesn't show in these statistics because I got exactly 0 contacts. And that was an activation in Glacier National Park back in 2021 before I started doing anything in YouTube. We were out at the west end of Lake McDonald, hanging out there for the day as a family. We had rented a couple paddle boards and the kids were out on the lake playing. And I set up a nice little station on a table and had a fan dipole at the time for 20 and 40 meters that I kind of set up in the bushes behind me. And I sat there and tried to make contacts for, an hour and a half, a couple hours, and never heard a single voice the entire time. I thought my problem at the time was that most of my hunters, or all at that time, because there wasn't that much participation in the western United States, and I was really close to a lot of them, but I thought the problem was that all of my hunters were across the Continental Divide. I had very tall mountains in Glacier National Park to my east. I thought that was blocking my signal. I have since learned that was probably not the problem, based on experiences I've had since then. We'll discuss the whys on some of these here after we line them all out. Let's keep going to the next one. Rocky Mountain National Park. This is my venture up to Sky Pond. And I called CQ on Morse code for about an hour and couldn't make a single contact. I tried hunting other signals that I could hear. Couldn't make a single contact. I switched over to SSB, oddly, after that hour, and real quick made 3 contacts. I just switched over to 20-meter SSB and turned my knob about a quarter turn, and the first voice I heard was Greg, KJ6ER, calling CQ from California, coming into that spot in Sky Pond, clear as a bell, going over those mountains that you see behind me in the background.
Italy 5, Germany Tango radio. All right, stand by radio ending in. I got a Whiskey Bravo Niner ahead of you. Whiskey Bravo Niner, go ahead.
So there's that one. Willoughby State Forest in Vermont. This is another one where I got out kind of late. By the time I found a spot and got set up, I was pretty close to the midnight hour out on the East Coast, and I just tried desperately hard to get 10 beforehand, but it was just very slow going. People could not hear my CQ call, and I got sidetracked for a little while trying to make a contact with Carlos was doing a parachute mobile on HF at that time. There was some weather in the area where he was jumping, and it was delaying things a little bit, and I was trying to wait and be real patient to get that, but that cost me some time there. Well, I thought, this would be cool if I could at least get a contact with Carlos as he's jumping, then I feel like I've done something even if I haven't gotten 10. But that's another one where I did not get that park. I could not get my 10 contacts, and the signals just went down in the evening, and I couldn't hear anybody to even attempt to contact with at that point, and I went home a failure. And my very first failure ever was pretty early in my POTA career. It was only about my 4th or my 5th attempt, something like that. Heck, we can look it up, can't we? It was my fourth activation at Little Missouri National Grassland. You can see I got 7 before the midnight hour, and got close. But in that one, I was kind of sitting down in a low area as well, so I thought at that time, that must be my issue. There were some transmission lines that were maybe 3/4 to a mile away to my east along the main road. I thought that could be the issue, but I think in all these cases there is a much more recognizable pattern. Well, let's look at that now. So here's a map of all my activation locations across the USA, and my failures I have changed to a red color. So all the ones that we've talked about now are in a red color. There's one that you can't see very well. It's here at Rocky Mountain National Park, but it kind of gets covered up for some reason. But it's right in there. You can see the other one here down in California kind of peeking out. And notice the other 3 are up north. Well, let's talk about this some. Well, first of all, let's go to this California one and say there's no other lesson for me to learn there other than I was stupid, and we don't need to worry about that one. There's no anomaly that's going to show there other than I just goofed up. Now notice how these are fairly far north. So I got this idea as I was operating up in Washington this year. You can see I had quite a few operations here up in this very northern latitude in the height of summer, and it is tough to activate up here in northern latitudes in the middle of summer. If you're traveling on vacation in the summertime, and you might be tempted to visit places in northern latitudes because it tends to be a little cooler, it will be harder for you to activate, and you need to be prepared for that. If you're planning on running an SSB QRP activation, you might have a really, really hard time getting that done because of the effects that we've talked about here recently on this channel on propagation during the summertime, and it gets worse the farther north you go. So some of you guys operating down in Texas or on the Gulf Coast, you may not notice that so much, but up north here it gets very, very pronounced, where even on 20 meters it starts getting impacted quite a bit. Okay, so we know that these are up north, but what about the timing? What about the season of these activations? Well, let's see. There's this one that was in Glacier. When was I in Glacier? Let's go here to my POTA page. My activations. Let's list all of them. Somewhere here is going to be a Montana, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming. There it is, Montana. Okay, so I got a couple here, Yellowstone, and there's the one in Glacier. Oh, July. The end of July, July 31st. Definitely a summertime month. Okay, back to the map. What about this one in North Dakota? That's that was my very fourth one. My very fourth. I guess that's true, but that didn't sound that didn't sound right. It's my very fourth activation in Little Missouri National Grassland. When was that? That was in late September. Okay, still kind of summertime there, isn't it? Is just started to be fall on the calendar, but propagation-wise, it's still pretty warm, and we're still a ways north. Okay, what about this one down here in Colorado in Sky Pond? When was that? Well, let's look that up. That was in 2023. Pan up here. Where am I at? Ironwood, Arches. Okay, it was after that. Rocky Mountain National Park. Oh, look at that. I was in Rocky Mountain National Park mid-July. Do you see a pattern forming here? All right, what about over here in Vermont? Is that Vermont or is it New Hampshire? No, it's in Vermont. Willoughby State Forest. Okay, well, when did I activate that? What month of the year was that? Well, it was 2022. Vermont, Willoughby, early July. Would you look at that? Every single activation that I failed simply because through no fault of my own, I just couldn't get 10 contacts, was in the middle of summer. 3 of them were at very high northern latitudes, high for the United States. And the other was in Colorado, which I've learned in the summertime due to dealer absorption and all that, and where it sits in the U.S., that's challenging as well. So a couple things to take away here. One, all of my failures took place in summertime propagation. Okay, so there's a simple lesson that I can learn right there in really keeping in mind how much more challenging it is in the summertime, especially for some of these like that. The Glacier and North Dakota ones were in 2020 and 2021. You're talking bottom of the solar cycle. New Hampshire was in 2022, which is kind of coming out of that. In those kind of situations, I got to keep in mind, maybe I have some other tools, Morse code and digital modes that I could have used and likely would have worked in those situations. Second takeaway, this is a big one. Second takeaway, every single one of these failed activations, the failed activations due to propagation, the 4 that we're focusing on right here in Colorado, Montana, North Dakota, and Vermont, all of these seemingly had terrain issues. Some more extreme than others, but in every situation, I'm down in a low spot and I'm looking at hills and mountains around me, wondering if that's keeping my signal from getting out. But I have since learned through experience in the past few years that yes, indeed, I can get a signal out of there and I can activate, but it's easy in those situations just to say, Well, I'm not thinking about summertime propagation or anything like that. There's just hills and mountains around me. That must be what it is. I've had too much success since then to believe that's the case. There's something else likely at play, and I think I figured out this year. I think I figured out what it is on all these activations. So there you go. What do you think? You have anything you want to add? Any experiences that you've had that you want to add to the conversation? Drop them down in the comments below. I'm Mike, Kilo Echo Zero Victor India Mike. This is the Travelin Ham. We'll see you next time. If you've made it to the end of this video, please consider joining my Patreon page or using my Amazon affiliate links before buying anything on Amazon. Remember, you don't have to buy the linked item. And please remember to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Help the channel grow.